What is up, guys? It's your friendly neighborhood web war fanatic, and this will be my official Jubilation hero review. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So, when I'm evaluating a hero, there are 5 major categories that are the most important to me, and that's going to be a hero's throwing ability, their attacking ability, survivability, economy, and versatility. So, for each major category, I have 3 subcategories that are the most important to me for each category. So, for throwing ability here, we have the stat line, control, and cards. So let's go ahead and take a look at Jubilee's stat line here. By stat line, I think it's very important for a hero to have an initial thwart stat of 2. 2 is that standard card that we're looking for so that they have strong initial thwart right out of the gate. And being able to thwart for 2 is really useful for taking threat off of side schemes or the initial threat off of the main scheme. So it's very good to have that stat line of 2 without needing to set up. And unfortunately, if we take a look at Jubilee's hero card here, she has a thwart stat of 1, attack stat of 1, and 2 defense. So since she only has a thwart stat of 1 to start the game off, she does not get a point for that category. But I do want to mention that Jubilee can easily get +1 thwart with her coat right here, which is a 2-cost upgrade that she can easily play with the shopping spree side scheme here, where she gets +1 thwart. So if she gets set up a little bit, I do think that she can easily get her thwart up. It's just that she needs still to spend resources to get that set up. She can't do it right out of the gate. So she cannot focus on the initial threat that's already in the scenario. Immediately, she has to deal with getting her coat out in play first. And in regards to her coat here, Jubilee's alter ego ability, I do want to go over it, is Mall Rat. As an action, you can search your deck for the shopping spree player side scheme and put it into play. Limit once per phase. So that is this side scheme right here, shopping spree. It can come straight into play from your deck with Jubilee's alter ego ability. So usually whenever the scenario begins, you can use this on your first turn to get this side scheme into play. Threat cannot be removed from the scheme by heroes or allies, and as an alter ego action, exhaust your identity to remove 1 threat from here. Any player may trigger this ability, and this scheme only has 2 threat. And when it's defeated, you can search your deck and discard pile for an item card and put it into play. So Jubilee has items here with her coat and with her sunglasses, right? So since this scheme only has 2 threat, you can get rid of it right off the bat if you have another way to, to remove threat from here. You just can't make a basic thwart activation from it, but if you have other ways through your aspect cards, you can get another threat off here and then get Jubilee's coat in play right away. And even if you can't do it on turn 1, you can definitely do it on your next turn, right? So because of that, I do want to say that her thwarting is, it's higher than what I'm going to show here, just because she doesn't have that initial threat removal, but I do think that she does have good thwarting. So she doesn't have a point for that category. The next category is going to be for control, right? What do I mean by control with thwarting? That means either by confusing the villain or some other way to allow Jubilee to flip down safely to alter ego to recover or to just have a break from the pressure from the villain, right? So that could be through something like canceling a villain's activation. That could be mitigating the villain's scheme stat so that they scheme for less, right? Does Julie have any way to do that? And she definitely does have ways to control the threat from the villain, and that is through her ways to confuse her, right? So if we take a look at Jubilee's thwart event, it's a 2-cost event, Flash of Light. As a hero action thwart, you can remove 3 threat from a scheme. If you pay for this card using 2 different resource types, confuse an enemy. So I think that this is actually really easy to activate this triggering condition of spending 2 different resource types for when paying for this card, because Jubilee has these double resources right here, which are all 2 different resource types, right? The mental physical, energy physical, and the energy mental. So if you use any one of these plasma energies to pay for the Flash of Light, you'll automatically get its effect to confuse the enemy. And it's pretty easy whenever you're paying for this card, just make sure that you use 2 different resource types, right? So I think that it's a very easy conditions, and Jubilee can easily and reliably confuse for very cheap, right? Just 2 costs here. You can take 3 threat off and get it confused. And she also has her Blinding Flash here, which is a 3-cost event. Here, action choose X enemies, where X is equal to the number of different resource types used to pay for this event. So if you use a energy, mental, physical, and wild, and I do want to note that whenever you're paying for this event, you cannot overpay for it, right? So you can't spend all 4 and then choose 4 enemies, right? The max is going to be 3, because Fantasy Flight Games didn't make the differentiation whenever they say the word pay and overpay. So paying means for the cost, not overpaying. And you can stun and confuse each chosen enemy, right? So if you use 3 different resource types to pay for this 3-cost card, you can stun and confuse 3 enemies, which is huge to get a stun and a confuse off. But more importantly, it can confuse and stun the villain, and that will allow Jubilee to flip down safely. So she definitely has a lot of ways to control in her kit, and she will definitely get a point for that. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at Jubilee's thwarting cards or threat removal cards. Does she have solid cards in her kit? And she definitely does, right? The card that we just looked at, the Flash of Light, 2 for 3 is that standard curve, which is not good if that's all it does, but since you get that confused off as well, that's a really, really good card and a very cheap card. And then she also has Jubilee's code here, which we looked at earlier, where she gets +1 thwart, which is really good. And as a hero response, this is another thwart activation. So if you use a Flash of Light, you can remove threat from another scheme, right? Because after you play a thwart event like the Flash of Light, for example, you can exhaust Jubilee's code and then choose a scheme. Remove 1 threat from that scheme for each different resource type used to pay for that event, right? So if you get the confuse off the Flash of Light, you can also exhaust her code here and also remove an additional 2 threat off of another scheme. So it can potentially be, if you already have the code in play and then you pay 2 for a Flash of Light, that can be 3 threat plus 2 more threat here. So 5 threat removal off of potentially 2 different schemes, and you get a confuse off. So very, very cheap, very effective ways, very effective cards for thwarting. So even though I'm going to give Jubilee an overall score of 2 out of 3, because I do feel like that she does need some initial setup because she doesn't have that 2 stat for her stat line. She doesn't get the full 3 out of 3, but I do want to note that her thwarting is a lot better than what 2 out of 3 is portraying here. So it's probably more like a 2.5 or something like that. All right, so that's Jubilee's thwarting. Let's take a look at her next major category, which is going to be her attack ability. So for Jubilee's attacking, I have 3 subcategories here: her burst damage, instances of damage, and her cost for her attacks. So when taking a look at her burst, I think that is a very valuable criteria when evaluating a hero's attack, because you want to have massive burst damage to gun down a villain, right? There are villains like Venom Goblin, where when you flip him to stage 3, he'll deal the player 3 phase down encounter cards, and you don't want to reveal all those encounter cards, so you want to gun down that stage 3 the moment that you flip him. And then if a villain has Retaliate, you don't want to deal with a bunch of small points of damage, because then they're going to retaliate a lot, and you could be taking potentially 5 more damage, and you may not have the health to survive all that. So you do want heroes that have big burst damage. And Jubilee definitely does not have big burst damage, right? So she has her 2-cost event here, Firecracker. It is a hero action attack, deal 4 damage to enemy. If you pay for this card using 2 different resource types, stun the enemy. This is a very good card because being able to get that stun off for just 2 for 4 damage and a stun is very valuable. And like we talked about with the Flash of Light, this is a very easy condition for Jubilee to trigger. But the stun is not extra damage, right? So if you are all ready to gun down the villain and you do not need to stun them, then this does not do any extra damage. It's only going to be 2 for 4, which is not the best. Jubilee's other attack event is not on Hall of Heroes, but it's on Reddit here, is the Grand Finale, which is a 3-cost event. Hero action attack, deal 2 damage to enemy for each different resource type. All the resource types that you use to pay for this card. Choose an enemy and deal 2 damage to it. So since it's a 3-cost event, you can use potentially up to 3 different resource types. 3 times 2 is 6, so you could do 2 plus 6, which is 8 damage. And that could be spread around across 4 enemies, which is really nice. But for the burst damage, we can condense it all to hit 1 enemy for 8, right? For 8 damage. So 3 for 8, I think is that standard card that we're looking for, and that is very good. But unfortunately, Jubilee only has 1 copy of this card in her kit. If she had 2 or 3 copies, I would probably give her the point for this. But since she only has 1 copy of this, she won't get the point. And I should have said earlier, but she has 3 copies of Firecracker as an attack event in her kit. She also has 3 copies of the Flash of Light, this thwart event. But yeah, for Firecracker, 2 for 4 is not very good for burst damage. The Grand Finale is, but unfortunately, she only has 1 copy. And then Jubilee also has her sunglasses right here, which is the exact same thing as her coat, but for attack. Right, so this 2-cost upgrade, Jubilee gets +1 attack. As a hero response, after you play an attack event, you can exhaust Jubilee sunglasses and then choose an enemy. Deal 1 damage to an enemy for each different resource type used to pay for that event. So this is nice because if you're paying for Firecracker, it can potentially be a 2 for 6, right? You can get 2 more damage off. If you're paying for the Grand Finale, it can do 3 more damage, so it's effectively 3 for 11, which is really good. But it's only for that 1 card played, right? Because then the sunglass will be exhausted, and then next time you play an attack event during that turn, you won't be able to get additional damage off of it, right? So I don't think that Jubilee has a reliable way to do a massive big burst of damage, so she does not get a point for the burst damage here for attack. Next, let's take a look at Jubilee's instance of damage. And I think that this is also a very important category when evaluating a hero in Marvel Champions, because small instances of damage allow you to deal with minions and control them, and it can also help you get rid of stuns, right? If your hero is stunned, if you can do an easy small instance of damage, you can remove your stun status by attacking, and then you can still do your big attack and do other stuff. And then if the villain has tough status cards, you can get rid of a tough with a small ping of damage and then still attack them. If a hero has piercing, I will also consider that as part of the small instance of damage, because that's kind of the category that I'm condensing in here. So for Jubilee, I did not give her a point of small instance of damage, but she is super duper close to that point. I just don't think that she's there because it's just a little bit clunky, more clunky than what I would have liked, right? So first, let's take a look at her grand finale again. So this card is like the best card for small instance of damage, because you can do 2 damage to an enemy and then do 2 more damage to 3 different other enemies, right? So if there's 4 minions in play that all have 2 health, like Ultron's drone minions have 1 health, and they may have 2 health if the upgrade drones is in play, you can knock out 4 drones, right? That's really good. The only thing about this is if she had at least 1 more copy of this card in her kit, I would definitely give her the point. But she doesn't. She only has 1 copy of this card, so it's a little bit unfortunate. It's just not reliable to pull out if you need that minion control or if you need that small pings of damage, because you only have 1 copy of it. So it may be at the bottom of the deck, it may be in a discard pile, and there's no chance that you can get it. There's no guaranteed chance that you'll get another copy of it. So because of that, I'm not going to give her a point because of this card. And then next, I want to take a look at Jubilee's Sunglass here. So this is a really cool card because this has the attack keyword. So this is a separate attack, right? So if you play Firecracker, that's an attack activation. You do 4 damage to the enemy, and then as a hero response, you can do another attack with the Sunglasses and do an extra 1 or 2 damage depending on how many different resource types I use to spend for your attack event, right? And for the Firecracker, the max is 2 because it's a 2-cost event. So you're doing 2 different attack instances, right? 1 of 4 damage and 1 of 2 damage with the Sunglasses. So this is really close to giving me for me to give her that category of having instances of damage, but it doesn't work out the way that I want. So what do I mean by that? If the villain has a tough status card, and I have no other way to get rid of it because I already used my basic exhaust, if I play a Firecracker, the Sunglasses is a response. So the Firecracker will do its 4 damage first, knock out the tough status card, and the Sunglass can do 2 damage afterwards, which doesn't feel good. I want if the Sunglasses was an interrupt, that would be really good for me, and I would definitely give it the point because then it would feel a lot more smooth. But because it is a response, it triggers after the attack or after the event. So you're getting rid of the tough with your main source of damage, and you're doing a small light damage after you already got rid of the tough. And the same thing goes for your stun stats, right? If Jubilee is stunned and she already used her basic exhaust, you can play a Firecracker. It does 4 damage, but then the stun will block the 4 damage, so you lose a stun instead, and this card is negated. But then you can still get the hero response here of the Sunglass because you played an attack event, but you can only do 2 more damage. So that feels really bad because the stun blocked off your big damage of 4, and then the Sunglasses can still do 2 to an enemy. So if the Sunglasses was an interrupt, I would like that a lot more, because then this attack activation would trigger first, getting rid of your stun or getting rid of the villain's toughness, and then the Firecracker would activate afterwards, and that would be really, really cool. But unfortunately, because of the ordering and the timing with it, and because the grand finale only having 1 copy of this in her deck, she's just a little bit under what I would consider a hero to have good instances of damage, so Jubilee does not get a point for this category. And then finally, we're going to take a look at her cost here. Does she have good costed events? And she definitely does, right? Because Grand Finale is easily a 3 for 8, because I think it's very easy to spend 1 of each resource type whenever you're paying for this card. And then the 2 for 4 is also very cheap, and you get a stun on top of it. So definitely a very, very cheap ways to do damage. The Sunglass is a very cheap event to give you +1 attack and to do extra damage every single turn whenever you're playing attack events. And all you have to do is exhaust the Sunglasses and make sure that you're spending multiple resource types whenever paying for these events, which I think Jubilee can easily do. Once again, because of these plasma energy resource cards right here. So yeah, Jubilee has very, very cheap, very, very effective attack events in her kit and ways to do damage. So she definitely gets a point for the cost here. So overall for Jubilee's attacking ability, I gave her a 1 out of 3 score. She has very easy ways to get the attacks out and to pay for them, but just not a lot of small instances of damage, right? If she's stunned or the villain has tough or if there's a lot of minions, I do think that she struggles a little bit with that. And then for the burst damage, I don't think that she can really do a massive burst of damage to defeat like a Venom Goblin stage 3 in one go, or like a Green Goblin in one go, right? I think that she'll struggle a little bit with that. Let's move on to her survivability. So for Jubilee, her survivability, the three categories I have are the Alter Ego and Hero card. What type of cards does she have in her kit, and her healing ability. So for the Alter Ego and Hero card, what I mean by that is I think it's very important for a hero to have innate survivability on their card, even if they can't draw anything on turn 1, right? So usually turn 1, the villain is putting a lot of pressure on you, and if you take multiple attacks on that first turn, can you survive? And can you survive without drawing into your lucky, defense event, or drawing into something that gives you additional hit points or more defense, right? So on Jubilee's printed card, on her Alter Ego, she has a recovery stat of 3, which is average, right? 4 or anything higher would be good, but 3 is average. She has hand size of 6 and 9 hit points, and 9 is a little bit below the average. We're looking for at least 10 here. That is kind of the average for most heroes. So having 9 makes her definitely feel very squishy. She doesn't feel like she can take a lot of hits. And then her stat line here is 1 Thor, 1 attack, 2 defense. 2 is that stand that we're looking for. But the defense stat for Jubilee, I don't think is that valuable, because if she didn't use her basic exhaust to defend, she can just recover for 3 instead of reducing the damage by 2. And then, she has that 9 hit points in hero form as well. So Jubilee has nothing on her card. She has a resource generator built into her hero card, which is good for economy, but not good for survivability. So she has no way to really survive if the villain attacks like 3 times or something like that on turn 1, which definitely happens with the more difficult scenarios. She'll need allies to block for her. So Jubilee does not get a point for her survivability. The next subcategory that we have for survivability is cards. What type of cards does Jubilee have in her kit? Does she have like defensive events? Does she have ways to stun the enemy? Does she have ways to just help her survive? And she definitely does. Her only way to help her survive is stunning, but she has such a strong way to stun and a reliable way to stun that I think that I am going to give her a point for this category. So the 2-cost attack event that we looked at earlier, Firecracker, you can do 4 damage to enemy. If you pair with this card using 2 different resource types, stun that enemy. And then she can also use a Blinding Flash here to also stun and confuse enemies, right? So I think Jubilee can reliably stun the villain, and that will help her survive an extra activation. So she definitely gets a point for me for her cards giving her survivability. And lastly, Jubilee's healing. Does she have a way to recover if she takes a lot of damage without using her basic exhaust? Because you probably need to use your basic defense if the villain's putting a lot of pressure and attacking you a lot, right? And Jubilee definitely does not get a point for this, because out of all the cards in her kit, she has no other way to heal other than using her basic recovery in her Alter Ego. So she does not get a point for that. Unfortunately, I think the survivability is one of Jubilee's weakest aspects in her kit, so she gets a 1 out of 3 for that. Definitely not very strong with the survivability. And then next we have Jubilee's economy. I think this is Jubilee's strongest category. She got 3 out of 3 for me. And the categories here are her Alter Ego and Hero side, the cards once again, and the cost of her cards, right? The cost curve, and how to pay for all of her cards. So for Jubilee's Alter Ego and Hero card, I think that this is a very important subcategory when evaluating hero's economy, because even if the hero does not draw into their resource generators, do you still have ways to generate resources? Do you still have ways to add additional resources or card draw to their kit to play cards on turn 1, right? And Jubilee definitely has that, right? Because of her hero ability right here. Like totally, it's a resource. You can exhaust Jubilee to generate a WoW resource. That is very, very useful to help get set up on turn 1, because oftentimes on turn 1, you only want to use your Thwart activation, or you're not really doing anything else, right? You don't need to attack or defend. Generating an extra resource would be really good with her basic exhaust. So she definitely gets a point, and she can do it every single turn. So I'm going to give her the point for that category for economy. Next, for the cards in Jubilee's kit, does she have ways to generate resources? And Jubilee definitely does not have any resource generators in her kit, but she does have the Plasma Energy here, which I think is a really, really strong card, and definitely one of my favorite cards in her kit, right? Just being a double resource, it's very, very nice. And she has 3 copies of these cards here, so she can effectively have 6 double resource in her kit with the Strength, Energy, and Genius, right? So I think that's very good for her to have, and she has many ways to pay for her setup cards and for her events. So she definitely gets a point here for the cards giving her economy. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at Jubilee's cost curve. Does she have cheap cards? And we talked about earlier with the coat is very cheap to get a +1 to your Thwarting stat and also have this type of effect. Same with the sunglasses. Firecracker is very cheap to also get a stun off. Flash of Light is also very cheap to get it confused off, right? She has very, very cheap cards. And then with the one copy of the grand finale, 3 for 8 is very good as well. So I think that Jubilee can definitely easily pay for all of her cards, and they are definitely under the curve. So she has a very good cost for cards. So Jubilee definitely gets a 3 out of 3 for her economy. And then lastly, we are going to take a look at Jubilee's versatility. And we have her in-game versatility, her cancels, and does she have versatility across different aspects, right? These are the 3 most important subcategories to me whenever I'm evaluating a hero's versatility. So in-game versatility means, can Jubilee play in a bunch of different ways? Can she do different things, right? Is she reliant on doing a specific thing, like for example using a basic attack activation or something like that? And Jubilee definitely is not. She can play whichever way she wants, right? She has a lot of ways to stun the villain with her firecracker. She has lots of ways to confuse with flash of light, which means she can play in a lot of different styles, right? She can stay in alter ego a lot. She can flip every single turn, or stay in hero form and keep the villain stun locked. Because none of her cards require her to do a specific thing, they just mainly require her to pay for them with different resource types. I think that adds a lot of versatility to the way she plays. So she definitely gets a point for me for her in-game versatility. Next, her cancels, right? Having ways to cancel encounter cards, in my opinion, is very important for a hero to have because it allows you to play with more freedom and do more reckless things. And unfortunately, Jubilee does not have any card in her kit to play during the villain's phase and react or cancel, nasty encounter cards. So she does not get a point for her cancels here. And then lastly, the subcategory here is going to be versatility across different aspects. Can Jubilee play with different aspects and still thrive, right? And I think she definitely can. Her kit is not very streamlined. She can kind of play whatever way that she wants. So I think she'll be strong in aggression, in justice, in protection, and in leadership. So she definitely has the versatility across different aspects. So for versatility overall, I gave her a score of 2 out of 3. So yeah, overall here, I have Jubilee. I think that her weakest category is going to be her survivability. I think that she does not have a lot of tankiness in her kit, and she feels very squishy whenever you're playing her. However, she does have very high economy, which is very good, and that gives her a lot of versatility for the way that she would want to play. And then once again, I do want to reiterate that I don't think a score of 2 out of 3 is very accurate for her thwarting. I think it's more like a 2.5 out of 3. But just because she doesn't have that thwart stat line of 2 to start off the game off, I do have to take away a point just with the way that I evaluate heroes. So overall here, Jubilee has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 check marks, and she is missing 6 check marks here. So overall, for me personally, Jubilee lands in the B tier. I think that she can definitely reliably take down most scenarios in the game, but I do believe that Jubilee will struggle a little bit with the more difficult scenarios. I think that she can take them down, but it will require a lot of deck teching and planning for the scenario specifically, and a little bit of luck. But overall, I do think that she is a very fun hero to play. And I like that she's not very streamlined in her kit, right? You want to be using a lot of different resources when you're paying for her, but that still allows you to play in a bunch of different ways. And I love her side scheme thing, right? I love the ability in Alter Ego to search your deck for the shopping spree player side scheme, put it into play. I really wish that you could search your deck and discard pile, but it's not that bad because mutants have mutant education, which is a great way to shuffle identity specific cards back into your deck so you can get the shopping spree back into your deck. And I do want to go a little bit more into the shopping spree ability with this card. This is a player's side scheme, but it does not go into the victory display because it does not have the victory keyword. So when it's defeated, it goes into your discard pile. And if you can get it back into play again, you can clear it off again and then get another item card and put it into play, right? So because of that, I think that Jubilee does present some interesting deck building opportunities, and I love building around this card and going off it with the chance encounters. So yeah, overall, Jubilee for me is a B tier hero, but I do really like her a lot, and I definitely encourage you guys to play her. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree or disagree with what I said in this video? I think I may have sold her short here with the attack here, because maybe I should just give her the point for instance of damage, but it just really feels bad for me that her sunglasses is a response and not interrupt, so that the attack event would be the one getting rid of a tough status card. I would have loved it if it was the other way around, and I really would have liked more copies of the grand finale. I think that this is a really cool card, but unfortunately Jubilee only has 1 copy of this card in her kit. But yeah, that is where Jubilee lies for me. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.